Welcome back to the second video. I'm Don Allen Rico, author of Newbie Gramps' Guide to Growing Grandkids. How's that for a bunch of G's? I am the Newbie Gramps. In our last video, I made reference to the generation of our kids being the common enemy. Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they are the enemy. That is the perception that sometimes that not only parents have, but kids too. Now, we'll discuss that further on here at newbiegramps.com. But for today, in this video, we're going to focus on a model that I use to distinguish some very important stages of growth in the lives of these young people we call grandkids. Now, perhaps you already know most of this stuff. Maybe not. The outline that I give is very general and a very broad category. It gives an approximate outline of the development periods in child development. Now, you can get more specific information by Googling child development on the web. But most importantly, what I hope to do is give you a little different perspective on the topic of raising children. This may help you to help your adult children as well. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to think back to the period that you were raising your kids. Sometimes as parents, we treat, or we have treated our children the same way we treat others, no matter what their age. Now, this is a mistake, and it happens all too often. You know, I've seen some parents literally scold their young children, as little as 2 and 3, as if they were adults. And it's incredible to think about. You must learn to treat others at their level of understanding and not yours. Now, I know that seems logical and what needs to be done, but that's not what happens much of the time. And that reminds me of the movie Matilda, with Danny DeVito in it, where he's talking to her and he says, "Listen, you little wiseacre, I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're little. I'm right, you're wrong. There's nothing you can do about it." But sometimes we think, that's how we think, is, I'm right, you're wrong. And we do need to change that understanding. Now, like I mentioned in the last video, I am an observer. I like to watch people and how they act and react. Now, once I was listening to a conversation between a mother and her 3-year-old daughter. The conversation was the mom telling the daughter why she couldn't have something she wanted at the store. Does that sound familiar? Now, she told her daughter the standard line that she had heard. "No, you cannot, because we cannot afford it." Now, the mom talked to the 3-year-old as if she were an adult. Now, why should a 3-year-old understand what the word afford really means? Now, the little girl insisted in trying to figure out a way to get what she wanted, but the mom just wanted to stop talking about the subject. Now, this was a perfect teaching moment wasted, simply because the mom was in a hurry to get somewhere else or do something else. We need to take time and advantage of these opportunities to teach the children when they happen. How many times does that happen? Have you ever heard a child respond to the adult to go to the ATM machine, the magic machine that spits out money? Has that happened to you? What was your response? Did you take time to explain how it works? This is very important, to take time with the little ones and understand their language. Now, first of all, language needs to be modified, not the child being ignored. Nor does it need to be turned into hypocrisy, the use of forms of speech that imitates baby talk. In other words, we don't need to stop there. It just needs to be brought down to the understanding the level of the child, and to bring the levels at which we could also bring the level of the child's, their understanding up a little bit also. Okay, great, you say. Just how can we do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's look at a model that I frequently use to enlighten one's understanding. Okay, assuming that parents have about 18 years as the active span of raising a child, and that 18 years being a freedom point, which we'll talk a little bit more later, we can draw a timeline kind of like this one. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll take from 0 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 18, and then beyond. You know, it was once said that a child learns 60% of his or her adult thoughts by the time they're 5 years old. And 98% of what they are going to use as an adult by the time they're 18. So if you look at the timeline, there are 3 basic periods of growth during this development period of time. Each period can be detailed and further broken down, but I think you can understand what I mean just by thinking them into the 3 different segments. The 0 to 6, the 6 to 12, and the 12 to 18. Okay, let's look at the 0 to 6. Okay, remember that 60% of what the child will base the rest of his or her life on is programmed right here in this area. Okay, this is very important. So let's think for a minute. What are those thoughts that get programmed in at this area? Okay, first of all, we have a language, or perhaps 2, and we won't even talk about 3, that comes later on. But 1 or 2 languages at home. This becomes the mother tongue. We also have culture being programmed in as well. Now this is very strong and key info. This is information that really determines a lot of how the child will react in society later on. Okay, but even more important than that is love. Now, this is not a verbal concept. This is transferred. Verbal tones, inflection, body language, acts, money, yes and no. That's another video that we'll get into later. But most important is that transfer factor. You cannot lie about this. It's heartfelt, soul to soul. Okay, now there's some studies that I want to mention. A few of the facts that are really surprising. And you know, this is so crucial in the way you treat your children. Once you understand what I'm about to tell you, you should look at a child differently and realize the importance of love. Okay, from his book, The Science of Influence, Dr. Kevin Hogan discusses the power of physical appearance. In it, he rhetorically asks, where does all this come from? You know, our obsession for beauty. And then he goes on to explain something that I find crucial that all grandparents should know. Now, moms and dads too, and perhaps that's where you can help your kids understand this as well. But I think that perhaps this is more for us men than it is the women, or at least it should be more logical to them. Now, Kevin Hogan, in his book, he says, the answer to that question is a bit of a story. It all started when you were a baby. The baby is born, and in less than 3 days, the baby will imitate simple behaviors. They start imitating your behaviors, and that is very important, because if your behaviors are off or quirky or things like that, you begin to transfer those to your children. Now, they imitate these behaviors such as smiling, frowning, sticking their tongue out, and within a few more days, the baby gains a clear vision of her environment, and she's now able to focus on people, easily distinguishing mom from other people. When mom leaves the room and the baby is shown a picture after picture of stranger after stranger, the baby looks at those photographs of people who are physically attractive for much longer time than those people in the photographs who aren't physically attractive. Now, the desire to look at beautiful people and symmetrical objects, by the way, that is pre-wired into the little baby's brain. Very interesting studies. These are very interesting so that we can kind of understand how they develop. Now, there are more distinctions in the infant's observational patterns. You know, the infant prefers looking at faces that are smiling versus those with a scowl or frown. Grandpa, get that scowl off your face. Okay, it affects your little one. Okay, now this response is also pre-wired into the infant. And even more startling, though, that is the behavior of the mother with the baby. Mothers of babies who are perceived as attractive are more likely to gaze at their babies and allow no distractions from the world around them to distract them. Now, babies who are perceived, and this is independently of the mother, those that are perceived as unattractive are more likely to be cared for in the sense of having their diapers changed, being burped, being fed, with secondary attention paid to the baby's faces. Now, that all comes from a survival instinct as well. Now, the mother, of course, is unaware of her behavior contrasted to that of other mothers. Her behavior to gaze at beauty was pre-wired in at her birth as well. The experience of the enjoyment of beauty begins in the gene and is further shaped in infancy. Now, that is extremely, extremely important information. I would go back and watch this video again just to bring that in. Or download the I've put a PDF in here of some of the notes here so that you can look over that, because of the fact that the information is so important.